Hi, and welcome to another Scientology Outside of the Church podcast. This is season 12, episode 7. We're going to do a podcast on emotional charge, and it's going to be the truth about emotional charge and what that all entails, and give a breakdown of the things that basically push people around every minute of every day that they're not asleep, and sometimes even when they're asleep, depending on what the situation is. I'm here with Quentin Stroud, and Arthur has the evening off, so it'll just be Quentin and I. Quentin, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing fantastic. My emotions are intact.
You're not charged.
Well, that as much as I could be, trust.
Yeah. So let's get right into this, and basically, let's delineate this for our listeners and subscribers to the podcast, and ask the question: have you ever wondered why something from 10 years ago can still ruin your day in 10 seconds?
Jeez, man. Yeah, I mean, we don't really talk a lot about this, and I think that when people think about independent Scientology, they think of it's more of a heady religion, like it's more of a heady spiritual practice. And so what ends up happening is those emotional moments when a person is really going through something, right? And we're going to get into the depths of that in a minute. But those emotional moments often get intellectualized and reframed sometimes as something that's going on in the head and not the heart. And again, I'm using these terms colloquially, like these expressions are something that even kind of are misnomers, but I think you get what I'm saying. Where
Yeah.
it's like stuff is I'm feeling some kind of way, and as opposed to that being immediately recognized as an intense emotional event, it can sometimes be intellectualized. And that's what we're going to kind of deal with right now.
Right. It's something people deal with every day. And emotional charge is there because there's something that has been yet heretofore unhandled that they can't spot themselves, that is causing them to experience this misemotion.
Mm,
Uh, and it can have multiple earlier events that are affecting them that cause the present charge, the manifestation of that emotion, to manifest in very severe ways.
yeah. Well, I think you just said something like misemotion, the misemotion, which I think is interesting how we use it. So let's start there. Why do we call it misemotion?
Well, misemotion, if you see somebody get upset about something, you're talking to them, and all of a sudden they respond in a way that does not befit the current situation. And then the
Mm,
person says, so what are you getting upset about? Whether it's anger, fear, grief, apathy, you name it, that is not what one would expect somebody to respond with. And that is charge, bypassed charge that's been touched on but not handled, that is showing up as a manifestation with that person at the time that you're dealing with them, or even yourself. Why am I feeling
yeah,
this way?
yeah. Well, and it's especially when you as a being want to go through life, and of course we know life isn't always happy rainbows and unicorns and whatnot, but we typically want to go through life experiencing the pleasures of life, experiencing those moments of life that makes us feel good and makes us feel pro survival and makes us feel like we want to keep going and very uptone and upstat, right? So in the tech dictionary, misemotion is defined as anything that is unpleasant emotion, such as antagonism, anger, fear, grief, apathy, or a death feeling. It says emotion and misemotion include all levels of the complete tone scale except pain. Emotion and misemotion are closely allied to motion, being only a finer particle action. And then misemotional, which is right under that, it says such a word would indicate that a person did not display the emotion called for by the actual circumstances of the situation. Being misemotional is synonymous with being irrational. Isn't that interesting? And
Mhm.
so if you're dealing with your 2D or your relationship, or you're dealing with somebody who, you really want to have a good flow, and yet boom, this this seemingly irrational, uncalled for emotion displays itself, that is being misemotional to the situation, right? And it doesn't mean that they don't have a right to feel how they feel, and they have, they are a completely self-determined, free-willed individual, right? And so if that's how that person is choosing to show up in that moment, or wishes, or wants to show up in that moment, that's totally up to them. But it's still a misemotional thing. It can still be considered misemotional.
Right. And that is the issue, is why am I feeling this way, and how do I handle it? It's charge makes you overreact or underreact because you
Mm,
are in a position where I need to do this or I can't do that. And so the person
mm,
shuts down and doesn't communicate. And so they're quiet because, I mean, it could go as far as somebody said when they were a kid and slapped them, be quiet.
yeah, yeah,
Or I mean, it can manifest in so many different ways. It's hard to understand, but you're on the outside when you're dealing with that person or even with yourself. You don't know what the reason is or the why for it is, but it's an emotional response that is not what one would expect at that moment in time.
right. And back of that, and this is what we're going to go to now, but back of that is where we have these secondaries, right?
Hmm.
These secondaries. And so, if you understand, for those of you who have read Dianetics, and if you haven't, we're going to kind of break it down a little bit. But physical pain, physical pain and unconsciousness is necessary for the creation of an engram, right? So what ends up happening is, when a person experiences physical pain and unconsciousness, the analytical mind shuts down to whatever degree, and the reactive mind kicks in. It turns on. It starts recording, right?
Right.
This is an engram. Now, what LRH discovered was that emotional pain can have a very similar effect, right? Emotional pain can also be like a blow. And if you ever have experienced a sudden announcement of a loss, like, oh, somebody passed away, or a sudden announcement of a breakup, I'm out of here, I'm over, this is done, and you can experience a very heavy emotional incident, right? This is called a secondary. The reason why it's called a secondary is because it gets its charge, or the bulk of its charge, from an earlier engram. Am I explaining that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it gets its charge, or the bulk of its charge, from an earlier incident, which contains physical pain, which contains unconsciousness, which contains loss, which contains grief, whatever those feelings that one may be feeling. And the secondary turns on, and that's when misemotion really starts to kick in. That's when the irrational fears, the irrational grief or anger or whatever starts to kick in. And this stuff can go on and on and on. And the person who might be experiencing it, again, because it's below their conscious level of awareness, they are not, I don't know why I feel this way. I just feel some kind of way right now. This don't
Right.
feel right to me. You
Right.
know, we hear it all the time.
Yeah, because if they knew what was wrong with them, it wouldn't be wrong with them. Therefore, it wouldn't be miss emotion.
Hmm. Yeah.
So,
It would just be what, yeah, it'll be what I'm experiencing, what I'm feeling right now in this moment. And and if I can explain that rationally, like if there's a loss of a relationship and a person says, "Oh, I'm sad about that," that makes sense. Totally got that. You know what I mean? You there was somebody who you cared about, somebody who you loved, and the deal ended. Okay, I'm sad about that, right? But if it starts to get irrational, if it starts to get the overwhelming grief, I can't live without you, and I'm gonna. You know what people's, you know how it goes, right? And all this stuff starts to turn
Yeah.
on. Now there's something back of that. Okay, let's take a look and see what's going on,
Yeah, and that's the thing is that it's not something that is controllable. It is just something that, well, and this is why it's called the reactive mind, is
Yeah.
it is a reaction. It is a reactive response for which there seems to be no apparent reason. Somebody says, well, I was abused as a child, and that abuse that I received from that dollar store clerk reminded me of that.
Hmm.
Okay, if that was that, then why did you have misemotion?
Yeah. Yeah. If you knew from whence it came, then why you let it come?
Right, exactly. So there's still something there that is yet unseen, which gets into, the Scientology axioms and the Dianetic axioms that for anything to persist, there's a lie behind it, and this is something that is uninspected, but yet is persisting.
Mm.
So so
Yeah.
that gets us to it's in money, it's in body image, it's in abandonment, it's in abuse, it's in going to the grocery store as a normal matter of business, and there's a certain smell or a certain sound or a
Hmm.
certain look that then quote unquote triggers or re-stimulates you to where something happens, and
Yeah.
then you have this reactive mind response, which is a now I'm supposed to response, because it's trying the reactive mind is trying to protect you. That's what it was designed for, but it's gone wrong.
Right. Right. And so you're in the store and you see a jar of pickles, and oh, you know, he always loved pickles. And boom, crying, 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 all this kind of stuff happens or whatever, right? And again, a person experiencing the full range of emotions is a healthy thing. It's clearly that we as beings have the ability to experience the full range of emotions. But pickles, the purpose of pickles is not to make you cry. Not what pickles are for, right? So if seeing the pickle turns something on, I hope you following the logic here. If seeing the pickle turns something on, there's something that's connected with it. There's some stored grief or some stored anger or some stored whatever it is that's back of that is being turned on, being activated, re-stimulated, and now we realize that there's something much bigger here that I should or could take a look at, right, and deal with. And this is why auditing works. Because what's happening is in auditing, you're going to go in and you're going to, with your auditor's help, you're going to find those things that have locked you in that state. You're
Right.
going to,
And
go ahead.
yeah, I mean, and the way that you can handle this with a person, and again, we don't want to use what, who, or why questions,
Yeah.
because that gets us into a lot of charged territory, and we're not doing that type of auditing. But it has a lot to do with this. But you could talk to someone, and you could find areas of charge that need to be handled, and say, so tell me how you feel about things you avoid talking about.
Hmm.
Tell me how you feel about the things, and how this occurs when you become instantly angry.
Mm.
Tell me what your thoughts are on when you freeze up and you seem almost paralyzed. Things like that. What get the thoughts, feelings, and considerations around memories that still replay or things that activate the person the fastest. These are charged areas. And you can go in with Dianetics procedure without a meter, and you can help that person with those areas by just running it with good old fashioned, tried, true, trusty Dianetics book one.
Hmm. For
You
sure.
you did that for 400 hours.
Yeah. And what's interesting is the thing, and LRH is so right, and you said it too, Jonathan, that if you knew what it was, it ain't it. because and this is why talk therapy, psychotherapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, whatever, this is why it kind of, I get what you're trying to do, but you're not really hitting it. Because if the person can sit there and say, "Oh, when my mother, you know, said no wire hangers, and did what she did or said what she said, and that just messed me up," it ain't it. That ain't it. It's
Right.
because, because if you could put your finger on it, that ain't the what.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's for it to persist and to still happen, there's something else underlying that you haven't seen, or it wouldn't be persistent, like we said earlier. So there's something else that's going on there, and that's something that is unobserved. And how you find that is either with Dianetics or Scientology auditing, or preferably both, to find the bypass charge that the pre-clear is unaware of in order to prevent these things from happening again.
Hmm.
I mean, people try to affirm their way out of it, meditate it away, numb it with alcohol, drugs,
Hmm.
or just plain ignore it, not is it. And
Right.
I mean, on and on and on. But the charge stays until it's released, which is very much the case. So that brings us to how emotional charge is discharged.
Yes. And so
So go
I'll
ahead.
say this: when we're looking at the tone scale again, these emotions that one can experience all across the emotional tone scale, as a free thetan, as a person who can move up and down the tone scale, when it's required or when it's necessary or when it's called for, that is normal, right? That is havable, right? It's when a person starts to get, uh, I'm using these words not to evaluate for anybody, but just to kind of get you to see what's happening, or when this could happen. When a person might start to get snappy or antagonistic, when a person might start to get very bitter and holding grudges, when a person starts to get withdrawn, they kind of come across as numb, like they don't care, they don't give a, I don't give a, you know. When a person is overly fragile, right? Or overly dramatic. It's like I say the slightest thing and it just crumbles your entire universe. Like, no, 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 that wasn't my intention. I was just trying to say I didn't like those shoes. Like, what? You think I'm fat? What? It's like all that, right? And so what ends up happening is these held in place emotional charges are sticking there for some reason. They're stuck there for some reason. And it's important that we go in and are able to discharge these emotions, these emotional incidents, these secondaries. It's important that we go in and discharge them. What is the way that we handle secondaries?
Well, you can run a secondary, just like you can an engram or a lock, because the more you go over it, the more charge comes off, which leads to the engram. So you can use it as an entry point, uh, just as easily. It's whatever is real to the person. So you could
Mhm.
say, so tell me about what happened to. They say, gosh, I started getting this nauseous feeling. I went to Burger King, and I just started to feel sick, and I had to run into the bathroom and throw up. Okay, so tell me about that. And you get there and you say, okay, so go to the beginning of that incident and tell me when you're there. And they run through it, and you say, okay, good, let's go back to the beginning of the incident and tell me when you're there. and they run through it. And as you do that, you get more of what's going on. And then you can take that to jump to if it's a lock or it's a secondary, whether doesn't matter what it is, it's all going to lead into the fold of that engram and at least currently what's going on into an engram chain, and you'll have an earlier time where the person felt sick about food, and an earlier
Hmm.
time, and it could lead anywhere. You never know where it's going to go. You know how this works, Quentin. You've seen that,
For sure.
and so that's the interesting thing about auditing is that you never know where it's going to lead, because if you did, it wouldn't be aberrating you, like we've mentioned here in the podcast.
Right. Right. Well, and the thing I love about Dianetics and independent Scientology auditing is that what's interesting about it is that when you go to the beginning of these incidents and you're going over it, you're returning to that moment, you're returning to that incident, and you're re-experiencing it, right? With all full perceptics, with all the things turned on. And so, might you cry? You might cry. I remember snot coming out of my nose. I remember headaches. I remember my forehead, like because I was so angry, my forehead was crinkled up, and I was getting a headache, like right there in the front of my forehead. Like it was I was so in it, okay? I was so in it that all this stuff was turned on. It was I was re-experiencing these emotions. I was re-experiencing these incidents. And what ends up happening is that each time, like you said, each time you contact it and gotta go to the beginning, go over it again, go to the beginning, go over it again. Each time you contact it, you discharge a little bit of that emotion or that charge. You discharge a
Right, it
little bit of it.
dissipates.
Yeah, it dissipates, correct. Well, what's interesting is that if it doesn't, and there is an earlier similar, and there's an earlier similar, you can find where this stuff was coming up, and you might not have known that that's how you felt. There was a situation with my brother. I was in session, and I had no idea because at first I was just starting to get sick on my stomach. And so I told, about my somatic, what was turning on. And we go earlier, similar. And it was an incident with my brother where we were wrestling. This was when I was a kid, like a small thing. And we were wrestling, and my brother ended up kneeing me in the stomach, not like trying to like hurt me, but we were just kind of tumbling, boom. I get so angry. And so I just started wailing like wow, 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 wow. I can laugh about it now, but I just started wailing, whoa, 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 whoa. And my brother was older than me, so he was a little bit taller and bigger than me. But listen, I wasn't backing down. Okay. And I say all this to say is that when you're going through this stuff, you don't know. I had no idea that back when I was like 5 or 6 years old, whatever, that I was dealing with that still at 43.
Yeah.
43. And I'm going through these feelings. And so I'm just giving you this viewpoint, not to say this is your experience, yours could be totally different, but the stuff that is really hurting you, and I'm saying hurting emotionally, and in my case, it was even physiological. I was having like gut issues because of this. The stuff that is hurting you could be stuff that you have no idea is there until you get in session.
Right, right, because you have to start somewhere.
Right, for
so
sure.
so that's the whole point, is that you will go the adverse effect of this stuff until you get some reality on it, and then you go, oh, okay, well, I need to keep working on this, because as an example, here you are talking about this incident that happened to you as a child, and you're laughing about it.
Right. Yeah.
that's
Yep.
that's not misemotion. Is you're looking at it for what it was, and you saw how it was affecting you as an adult.
Right. For sure. A- and I've been able to do the same thing when it comes to my father's death. I've been able to do the same thing. Like, just you get to a point where I got it. Like that, the grief becomes a memory. And not to say that I don't miss my father, not to say that I don't have still that feeling, excuse me, that feeling of wanting to be, you know, communicative and present with my father, but the grief charge doesn't sit on me. You know, the grief of it all doesn't weigh on me. And so I'm able to live and thrive and move while my brother, unfortunately, sits with it often. And we've talked about it multiple times, right? About how,
Hmm.
how much, that loss affected him and still does. And so these things are very, very real. And we just wanted to have this conversation because I think a lot of times when we talk about um, independent Scientology, we often talk a lot about what's going on in the head space. And I'm using that again, not literally, but we kind of talk about what's going on in the intellectual space versus in the emotional space. And we want you to know that as a happy person, as a clear, right? If you're clear, you experience the full range of emotions. I get happy, I get sad, I get mad, I get glad. Like you experience a full range of emotions, but you don't get stuck there as a clear. You don't get stuck there when you don't have that reactive mind feeding data into your lived experience right now. Boom, 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 over and over and over again. And it's like, how do I get free of this? Well, there's a way. And we facilitate that, we help that, we want you to understand it by going on the college of independent Scientology.com, and you can take courses. You can get into this and you can really understand what's going on with my mind, what's going on with these emotions that seem to take hold of me, you know, and then
Right.
you can
And
handle
it,
them.
and they push you in directions that you wouldn't normally go. It's like being in a labyrinth that you don't know where it's headed, and sometimes it's a dead end, it's a blind alley. And we've talked about this in other podcasts about now I'm supposed to's and considerations and all of this stuff, and these are all monitored by what's in the reactive mind. Well, hey, maybe you should move to Los Angeles, and you could get a fresh oh no, Los Angeles, oh that's my dad died there, and oh, it's
Yeah.
terrible, and I could never go there. It's because it's related. A equals A equals A. It's one thing equals another equals another, and so that's part of the labyrinth that leads to a dead end. Oh, I can't do this. Oh, I can't do that. Oh, I can't do
Yeah.
this. And you go down all these blind alleys and dead ends because you have these fixed ideas that are considerations on what you can or cannot do based off of past locks, secondaries, and engrams that have created this emotional charge that says, danger, danger, danger. I can't do that. And this is where you run into, why can't I ever get ahead in life? Why can't I do this? I always wanted to do this, but I've always got a false start and I can never complete the cycle of action. This is why. That is the misemotion. That is the emotion that you're running into that is pushing you in a direction than the one you want to go in.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you continue to release this charge, even just dealing with these secondaries, man, this is so good because even just dealing with these secondaries, the anxiety starts to feel safe again. That part where you used to feel anxiety, now you feel safe again. Where you used to say, I can't do this, I can't do that. Now you start to regain abilities, right? Where you used to feel shame and feeling ashamed of how you express or what you said or what you do or whatever. When crying becomes uncontrollable, all that stuff becomes a thing of the past, and you now get to experience the emotions that you need to experience in the moment. So again, I say we're not automatons, we're not robots. We do have feelings, and boy, oh boy, you don't want to see you don't want to see me angry. Folks said, right?
Yeah, there's
But
there's 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 nothing wrong with having feelings. We're not trying to make you a Vulcan or something like that. Because I've
Yeah.
seen a lot of people say, well, I just won't have feelings anymore when I'm clear. No, 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 no,
No.
no. You will have the appropriate feelings, not
Yes.
feelings that you thought you were supposed to have, and you can move up and down the tone scale at will. Does that mean that you won't get upset about something? Well, maybe you'll get upset about something because you see an injustice,
Yeah.
or maybe your employees just don't understand how to do something, and you think, why am I getting angry about this? Okay, what could I take responsibility for? Oh, I know. After you talk to them, you find out they don't know how to do the job. Okay, well, that's my responsibility. I need to write up a hat and give them a check sheet that they know the policies and they can get through this, and then they can do their job instead of, George, by God, why aren't you doing what you're supposed to be doing? You know better. You're fired.
Yeah. It's
That's
it's it's to-
that's it's not analytical.
right. It's totally irrational. Yeah. And so we're going to um kind of open the doors, so to speak, to where those of you who are having these emotional turmoils, those of you who are going through this emotional stuff, and it seems to be like this has been going on for years, this has been going on for quite some time, this is not something that's going to be, you know it's just going to go away after time. When they say time heals all wounds or whatever, no, it's not just going to go away after a while. This is stuff that, by going in and being able to confront your own true self, your own past, incidents and stuff that's happened to you, and really deal with those things, can that emotional energy kind of be discharged to where now I get who I am, where I am, what I'm doing now in present time. And now, if I do feel something, get this, and I'm going to say this, and this has been my experience, being clear, you feel feelings richly. And I'm saying this for real, for real. You feel feelings richly. And so when I feel these feelings, it feels um not like it's not like it's taking control of me. It's like I control my feelings. And right now, I'm angry about this. I'm angry concerning this situation. I'm not okay with whatever's going on right now. I'm grieving because of the loss of a loved one, whatever the case may be. I feel those feelings and I feel them richly, but guess what? Very shortly thereafter, I'm back up the tone scale, right?
Right.
Very shortly thereafter, I'm back up, even if it's to a point of mild interest. Doesn't mean you're back happy. Ooh, everything is fine and the leprechauns are skipping. No, it just means that I'm back to a place where, you know what, I can have this moment, and I can experience this moment, and I can go through this thing, and I can think about the good times, and I can remember the joys and sorrows of, whatever might have happened, and I can move through that in a very rich way. It's so wonderful to be clear. It's such a rich vibrational experience. I don't know how to explain it to you, but you get the fullness of it, and then you say, now back to myself. I get the fullness of that emotional experience, mm, and then back to myself.
Right. Right. It doesn't cut you off from anything once it's been discharged, but you can look at it for what it is, and it's no different than I'm going to Disney. I went to Disneyland, and you remember going to Disneyland. Oh, I had a car accident and my leg got broken. All right, yeah, that happened. Okay, so what do you want to do for dinner?
Right. Right. Sure.
Because there's no misemotion in it, and that's
Yeah.
a fact. That's what happens when it's done standardly and correctly, using Dianetic and/or Scientological procedure, depending on what's going on. But it's also interesting to note that Dianetics can be used for so many different things. It's not what you might think, that it's just these incidents that happen, because so much of what we experience can be handled with Dianetic procedure, and there are so many different things you can do with it. It's like having that multi-tool in your pocket that has, or a Swiss Army knife that has all of these different tools and a toothpick. So if you need to get out something between your teeth, or you need to cut something open, or if you need to tighten something up or whatever, that's what new era Dianetics does. And that's how this happened. Is Dianetics in 1950 was good old Dianetics. And then by late 1970s, now we have new era Dianetics, and all of these discoveries are all wrapped into one. You're using a meter and you can address things so much, even allergies, even allergies.
Yes. Oh my God.
And that causes a lot of misemotion with people, for example. Uh, it just goes on and on and on. So it's such a multi-tool for so many things, and everything is the same way with a being. And then when you get on the OT levels, you've got newer Dianetics for OTs that doesn't even use Dianetics, because you can't. It's titled that you can't use Dianetics on a clear. You have to use Scientology, but it does the same thing through Scientology auditing, and it's unbelievable what happens, and it's very, very clever, and it's just mind blowing how simple it is. But this stuff works.
Yes. Yeah. And so we just wanted to do this episode just to kind of help you understand your own emotional charge, where these emotional charges come from, especially when you yourself even know that it's not you. It's not, this is not how you choose to feel. You know, this is something that's coming up and it needs to be looked at, it needs to be addressed. Imagine what happens when you start clearing this stuff out, right? You start going into these areas and you really get to the root of why you've been feeling the way you've been feeling for so many years, why you've been, mighty low around certain things, why you felt like you couldn't do certain things just because, and so, if you want deeper guidance and if you want us to kind of help you with that through auditing, through the coursework, we do the TRs and objectives, which is where student and coach relationship, where you're working your TRs and you're making sure you're getting these communication uh, channels handled very, very well, and just cleaning up that emotional space. So the technology is definitely here, and we're here for it. So
Yeah.
let's get into it.
Well, I hope everybody got something out of this and has a better understanding of what causes emotion slash misemotion. And it's very easy to understand if you've experienced it yourself. And once you see that it can actually happen, you go, oh, there's a tool for this. And that's all it takes, is once you have the reality of that fixed that, you're like, I want some more of this. So we'll be back with another podcast tomorrow. And thanks for listening. And we hope you enjoyed the podcast. We'll see you soon. Namaste. And we love you. Bye bye.
Peace.